Hi folks, I'm Dr. Tom Meade and welcome to our new show. Today my guest is Maria Rodale, CEO and Chairman of Rodale Press. We're here to discuss her new book, Organic Manifesto. But before we get into that, let me tell you something about Marie. Not only is Marie the CEO and Chairman of Rodale Press, the largest independent book publisher in the world, it also has an audience of over 70 million people in their magazines, including some of the most popular magazines in the world: Men's Health, Women's Health, Organic Farming, Prevention Magazine, Bicycling Magazine. Marie and I remember over the years swimming magazines, triathlete magazines.
Runner's World magazine.
Runner's World. I mean, some of the most popular magazines in the country. I'm so proud when I'm from the Lehigh Valley and I'm traveling around and the Lehigh Valley or Emmaus, Pennsylvania comes up and they say Rodale Press. And Rodale Press is literally one of the largest book publishers in the world. South Beach Diet,
right.
Al Gore's book, other great books. I think Pete Rose's book you published, and a host of other books. But what an accomplishment for this company, and now you're the CEO and Chairman of the company, so welcome to our show.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
It's great. And before we get into the Organic Manifesto, I mean, Maria's history is phenomenal. One might say it's obvious why Marie is writing a book. They publish Organic Farming Magazine, Prevention Magazine, but really when you drill down on the history, it's absolutely fascinating. Her grandfather, J.I. Rodale, really started the organic farming movement in this country in the 40s with a magazine called Organic Farming, was it?
Yes, it started as Organic Farming and Gardening, and now it's called Organic Gardening, and it's a great magazine.
And then embraced by your dad, Bob Rodale, it took off, and we all say, wow, they must have been wonderful people. They were so respected. We all look to go out and buy organic food. We know it's wonderful for us, but really, that wasn't the history, was it? The history was they were eccentric at best, maybe a little crazy, but it takes courage and heroes for people to embrace such a concept that we now perhaps take for granted. And for you to come out with the Organic Manifesto, I said, what a powerful title. I mean, the word manifesto, it's just such a strong word, a strong statement. You think of things like the Declaration of Independence.
Right.
It is a statement. It's a religion. It's a belief. And but with that history, obviously people understand your connection to organic farming and gardening, but why now, Maria? Why did you come out with this book at this time?
Well, I really believe everybody has a right to organic food. So like the Declaration of Independence, it's very, I feel very strongly that we should not be poisoning our children. We should not be poisoning our planet. We should not be poisoning ourselves. And I needed to do the research myself to understand the whole story. And after I wrote the book, I was more convinced than ever that organic is essential to our survival. Organic foods are essential to our survival on this planet.
I couldn't put the book down, folks. If you really want a good read, it's a common sense approach. It puts organic farming into perspective, but everybody from the foreword, from Eric Schlosser, was it, that wrote your foreword?
Yeah, he wrote Fast Food Nation.
Fast Food Nation, Reefer Madness. Yeah. I mean, but he put it in perspective, and he brought up some interesting points that, I mean, some of the people don't know that some of the largest chemical companies that are in control of our food production, 90% of our soy production is really under the control of a company called Monsanto that produces some of the largest agricultural chemicals in the world. Very few people know that organophosphates go back to Nazi Germany, and they were actually poisons used to kill people, and now they're used in our farming, and they're in our soil. And
exactly. The German companies that created the chemicals that killed Jews during World War II actually are, many of them are still in business making these chemicals today, and it's used in agriculture to kill insects and diseases and to kill us, actually.
It was fascinating, and one of their biggest competitors was Dow Chemicals.
Right.
And if one hears the word plutonium or napalm, or Agent Orange, these are chemicals that these companies have produced that are really in charge of our agriculture.
Well, Monsanto was the creator of Agent Orange, which was a big defoliant used in the Vietnam War. With some minor changes, it's now being sold as Roundup, which is by far the world's leading weed killer, not just in agriculture, but in people's backyards. So, and we know from studies with Vietnam veterans that Agent Orange causes diabetes because these chemicals are endocrine disruptors, and diabetes is an endocrine disease. So after researching this book, I'm more convinced than ever that the chemicals that we're using in chemical agriculture are actually at the root of the diabetes epidemic, the obesity epidemic, and also the autism and ADHD epidemic in society today.
I have to admit that I've used Roundup. I've used Roundup, and you know what? Not often, but when I've used it, it scares the heck out of me. And the reason, Marie, is I would spray this on weeds up in a cabin in the mountains where the vegetation is lush. In the morning, that afternoon, I would go out, the weeds would be dead. By the next day, they are black. Yeah. They are complete. I said, this is one potent chemical.
Most of the genetically modified seeds that are on the market, genetically modified corn and soybeans, the primary modification is that so they can survive that spraying of Roundup repeatedly, over and over again. So the killing that's happening to those weeds, that those plants survive, are what we're ingesting. And a group of endocrine doctors have actually issued they asked for a moratorium on genetically modified foods because they're seeing things like organ failure, liver damage, digestive problems, and even my favorite, accelerated aging from people and animals that are ingesting these foods. And this is what we're doing to our bodies and our children.
There's pesticides in all of us right now. I mean,
even me.
Even you. They're fat soluble, they're in there for a long time, and they have to have a long-term effect on our nervous system, our immune system, our hormonal system. And I think those are the things that we don't appreciate. People think you can wash them off if you wash off the vegetables, but they are embedded.
Well, they're also in the water. The runoff from those fields goes into our waterways, goes into the water we're drinking from our reservoirs and our wells, and it even goes into the plants and fruits that are growing. So it is really, literally, you cannot wash it off.
Pesticides not only hurt us individually as a species, but they're killing our planet. You'll find out how right after this message.
Every surgery requires recovery. You can make yours virtually pain-free with OnQ Pain Buster. OnQ delivers local anesthetic continuously to the surgical site for up to 5 days. Many surgeons rely on OnQ for pain relief that's superior to narcotics, helping you get back on your feet faster and feeling better. Ask your surgeon for OnQ. For more information, visit askyoursurgeon.com. OnQ Pain Buster, redefining recovery.
Folks, welcome back, and my guest is Marie Rodale, CEO and Chairman of Rodale Press, author of the Organic Manifesto, and that's what we're talking about today, but it's what everybody's talking about. This week, Time Magazine Health Special, the organic food debate. It's popular. People want to know, what's the deal with organic food? Is it worth it? Is it worth the cost? Why does it cost more? Should I eat it? Is it more nutritious? But it's hurting our planet, and we'll answer all those questions by the end of the show. Maria, I was a little disappointed in the Time magazine. I opened the article, and the first sentence almost dismissed the value of food. It basically said our body wants meat, our body wants fat, our body wants salt and sugar. Your body will put up with fruits and vegetables if it must, but only after all the meat, fat, salt, and sugar are gone. I completely disagree with that. It's not how we were evolved, but it was where the article was going. And for the question, where does your food come from? Whether it's locally grown, sustainably raised, grass-fed, free-range, or pesticide-free, your body doesn't give a hoot. And you know what? It may not give a hoot today, but it will give a hoot down the line because it's poisoning our body and it's poisoning our planet. They kind of settled out on the next page, and they did come back to reality, and it ended up being a very good article. Actually, they said, our diet is indeed killing us, and it's killing our planet. That's where we left off before the break. It is killing our planet, but most people don't think of that. They sort of have this common sense, superficial knowledge that organic food might be healthier with less chemicals. But how is it killing our planet, Marie?
Well, you know, before I wrote the book, I thought that nutrition was the most important aspect of organic food. And as I did the research, I found out that really nutrition, while it's important, is not at all the point of organic food. There are 2 points. One is as we talked earlier in the show, the diseases that are caused by chemicals in our bodies, but those chemicals are also killing living organisms in the soil that sequester carbon and clean our air and clean our atmosphere. So it hasn't really been reached the Time magazines of the world yet that organic farming is actually a major solution to our climate crisis and global warming or climate chaos or whatever you choose to call it. And even if you don't believe it exists, it's important for our soil to do what it was meant to do, which is absorb carbon, hold it in the soil, and keep it there. And the chemicals we use in agriculture actually kill those organisms.
They kill those.
And kill the soil, which makes the plants less resistant to drought and flooding and more fragile in any kind of stressful situation, which we know is not a good thing.
So we hear about the dead zones in the ocean and that sort of thing. It almost sounds like the chemical farming that's occurring now is creating a type of dead zone in the ground, although it's a little hard to understand because we're producing all this food that we think is great, but at a cost of killing some of the organisms that we can't see that actually eat up all the bad carbon dioxide emissions.
Right. Well, you know, you also can't see carbon dioxide, but it is very conceivable that we can get to a point where there's so much carbon dioxide in the air. It's like carbon monoxide, very similar, where one day you just don't wake up. You can't see it. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And I think it's exactly right to think about the dead zone in the Gulf is the same thing that's happening in the soil. And it's the same thing that's happening to us in our bodies. And a lot of these chemicals actually cause infertility, they cause miscarriages, they cause birth defects, and over multi-generations. So it changes your DNA for up to 4 generations. And that's frightening. We're really only just beginning to understand the huge potential for damage that we've already caused.
I love your analogy in the book when we talk about the emissions. We all kind of know that the exhaust out of our car and fossil fuels, and really what we breathe and exhale produces carbon dioxide or carbon monoxide. That goes into the environment and it's polluting. And you make a strong argument that we're actually producing more carbon than we're able to handle on the planet.
Right. Yeah, the reason that plants, and when you hear like plant a tree to save the environment, the reason why those plants are so important is because they are breathing in the carbon dioxide that all of us, both through our bodies and our factories and our cars, are exhaling. And that's the carbon cycle. We breathe out carbon, the trees breathe in carbon, they make oxygen, but they're also storing the carbon. And the soil is a key component of that carbon cycle that's been overlooked. And it's like a bank that has not been invested in or paid attention to, and it's been robbed. It's been robbed right from under our feet.
You know, it's almost like the rainforest or our trees. We all kind of know we shouldn't overforest because the trees are good and they produce oxygen and they take in carbon dioxide. It's almost like we're killing the rainforest equivalent under the ground.
Exactly.
And you bring that up very well. You say that we're almost smothering. It's like a pillow that's coming down on us slowly when we produce so much carbon product and we're not able to absorb that.
Right. And you know, it's an invisible pillow with symptoms that are kind of generic, you know, high blood pressure, dizziness, sleepiness, but those are the symptoms, you know, depression, that occur, you know, shortly before coma and death. And, you know, I don't know, that's not cool.
You know, it's kind of I think of all these analogies, it's like, you know, we really don't like to burn fossil fuels anymore, coal for heat, although it still provides up to 50% of the energy in our country. But we know if you burn coal, it produces this black soot in the air that's bad, so we should try to get solar power or wind power or green energy or all these sorts of things, even nuclear power. There's a couple different options. But we understand it because we see it. We see the soot that comes out from coal and we go, you know what? I don't care, it's going to heat my house, but I don't think that's very good. It's, But with conventional farming, we're almost doing the same thing, but we don't see it. We're polluting the environment by robbing the Earth's ability to absorb carbon, but we don't think of that.
Well, where we're starting to see it, and people have not yet made the connection, we're seeing it in the fact that 1 out of 90 kids today is diagnosed with autism. Obesity is a global problem, and wherever we transport, you know, you can read in the media, wherever we transport our eating habits, obesity goes up, but it's not just the eating habits, it's the farming habits. So autism, obesity, diabetes, ADHD, these are signs. These are the signs that the planet is telling us that we have exceeded our capacity to handle these chemicals, no matter what the EPA says.
What proportion of farming now is organic?
It's in the United States, it's less than 1%.
Less than 1%.
Globally, it's 4%.
4%.
We're actually behind many other countries.
So some of the European countries are ahead of us.
Some of the European countries are way ahead of us.
So we've just identified a lot of problems with conventional farming, the chemicals, the pesticides, the carbon footprint, the pollution of the environment. Are there solutions? Marie, in her book, came up with 5 solutions. You'll hear those right after this break.
Does hip pain affect your daily activities? Stryker's revolutionary new anatomic hip replacement may help.
The issue is quality of life. I think it all boils down to that.
Call 1-888-STRYKER to find out which Stryker anatomic hip option is right for you. Stryker's new anatomic hip is designed to help restore your range of motion so you can get back to what's important to you. For details about Stryker's anatomic hip options, call 1-888-STRYKER or visit aboutstryker.com.
Hi folks, welcome back. My guest is Maria Rodale, CEO of Rodale Incorporated. We're talking about her book, Organic Manifesto. Maria, I wrote a little article for one of the local papers called Orthopedics, Organic Food, and Overall Health. And I was looking at one of the statements I made early on, and it said the take-home message is we're all born, we will all die, and the quality of our life and the enjoyment of our journey can be controlled to a large extent by the quantity and quality of the food we put in our bodies. And that almost embraces what we're talking about today.
Exactly, that's great.
The conventional farming, I look at it as a two-step process. They're making Americans sick. We're making Americans fat. We're making Americans obese. With that, we're generating all these inflammatory mediators in the body, which is the essence of aging, whether it's Alzheimer's or heart disease. And the first step to health, I look at it as getting from this processed food with a lot of these high caloric, poisons, if you will, these tasty morsels that basically addict our population. Our country did not approach 70% overweight and obesity without a lot of help. Right. And that's what's offered out of there. So I kind of look at it as a two-step approach. If we could get people to get away from the processed food, I always said if you open your cupboard and there's something in there for 3 months, look hard and it may not be good. And there's some other statements I've come across that I love where if it doesn't come from a mother or close to the earth, don't eat it. And we could add the caveat of if it doesn't come from an organic mother or grown organically from the earth, you maybe should stay away from it. But I do think the first step is getting folks to understand the value of natural foods that come from the earth as a first step. And then the ultimate step is get them to choose organic. But our society is sick. I think it's going to bankrupt our country. I think the health costs due to obesity and everything that's involved with that, the metabolic syndrome, is going to bankrupt our country. And the answer is in our food and appropriate farming.
Right. No, you're exactly right. And I call it in the book the subprime farming crisis that we haven't even faced as a country yet. But it's the exact same thing in the medical system as well. And the companies that are causing this and profiting from it are walking away scot-free and in fact getting heavily subsidized by the government. So there's only really one solution, and that's the solution that we all really take action, both in our own lives and in our communities and in our government. It's hard work, but it's important work.
I'll run through your 5 solutions, Maria.
Okay.
The first one is the government ban agriculture, chemicals, and genetically modified organizations. Stop subsidizing these farms. Is that possible?
Well, the way I look at it is if we ban chemicals one by one, those chemical companies are so sophisticated, they're going to be able to work around that by changing formulas slightly, changing names of things. They've done it before and they'll do it again. So we have to take the big, bold, courageous step of saying these chemicals have to be banned.
And one of the amazing things I learned in your book is that we don't need these chemicals to produce the volume of food. The argument is we have to feed the earth, we have to feed the people. The yield is almost identical on an organic farm versus a chemical farm.
The yield is actually better on an organic farm than a chemical farm, and it's cheaper to produce. And it's more profitable to the farmer. The problem is farmers have no help making that transition, and they don't have the support of their bankers and their local communities and of the media to help them figure out how to do it. So it's totally possible.
It's totally possible. Why wouldn't they subsidize organic farms?
Because organic companies don't make the same level of profits to invest in the pressure, whether it's lobbying or media, PR pressure, to pressure the government not to make change. And it's kind of depressing.
It's business as usual in America.
It's business as usual. It's the same thing as Wall Street. The same thing. It's just less visible to most Americans.
You know, Maria, in medicine, it's analogous to the big pharmaceutical companies.
Many of which are also making chemicals. The pharma companies and chemical companies are very closely aligned. Bayer, for instance. Bayer.
Yes, aspirin.
Also has Bayer Crop Sciences, which is one of the largest chemical companies in the world. So Bayer is one of the companies that actually created the poison gas in Germany.
And now they produce one of the largest medicines that people take to prevent heart disease, a baby aspirin a day type of thing.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that pharmaceutical companies have infiltrated medical schools. Certainly when I went to medical schools, we had a year of pharmacy, how to prescribe medicine. I don't think we had a week of nutraceuticals or natural approaches.
Exactly.
So everybody gets out of school and we do what we were taught. We had pens by pharmaceutical companies, we had dinners by pharmaceutical companies, and the same thing, I guess, happens in the chemical world where they go into the agricultural colleges and they embrace the students and They give money and gifts.
Even in the 4-H clubs around, so they're starting with kids. They're funding the kids programs, the Future Farmers of America. It's exactly the same, only it's even worse, I would say. And the reason they can do it is because they're making so much profit off of these chemicals and these drugs that they can afford to infiltrate every aspect of people's lives.
Yeah. No, it's buyer beware, even in the pharmaceutical companies, the direct-to-consumer advertising that's out there. You know, Pfizer, one of the biggest companies, had billions of dollars in sales in some of their statins that are out there on the market. And, you know, we've discussed this on the show before, where they've had some misleading ads that are direct-to-consumer. And
one of the big differences, though, is when a new drug comes on the market, it's very tightly controlled in terms of seeing the impact on people's health. So that's why you see drugs being pulled after certain years, because it causes suicide or death or, you know, unexpected consequences. With agricultural chemicals, nobody is measuring the consequences of those chemicals on people's health as required by law. Universities are studying it, doctors are studying it, but it's not a requirement of those chemicals that they be tested for safety.
wow, it's a fascinating discussion, and I know they stopped even measuring how much pesticides are used on the farms.
Exactly.
A decade ago or so. Folks, Maria had 5 solutions that we were going to go over. We had such a fascinating discussion. We only got to 1. You know what that means? It means we need another show. So, Maria, would you come back and we'll go over the rest of this and we'll carry on this great conversation?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. But if we could just summarize it into one thing, demand organic.
Demand organic, and that will be a solution we talk about in the next show. Maria, thanks for joining us on this show. We look forward to the next show. Folks, you're not going to want to miss it.